So my passion is to learn about other people's passions, because when someone has a chance to talk about what they're most passionate about, everything about their being becomes brighter, it becomes more real, it becomes more them. And I think that authenticity and that feeling alive and connected and present in the world is a thing I want to surround myself with all of the time. On today's episode, I am talking with the compelling Kristi Ryujin. If you want to learn more about Kristi, please go to janesplace.com, where you can learn more about her and her favorite comfort food. Well, let's get back to your passion, because this is so, I love talking about family and how, because so much of, as the question you asked me, who we are, is how we were brought up and how we felt as kids and what our community was. So tell me a little bit about what you are most passionate about, what you care about, and sort of how that has kind of grown inside of you.
Well, I'm really passionate about students' education, and particularly people that sort of have had or have been sort of at the margins. Folks who I think don't always fit into the perfect sort of spaces within organizations or groups or communities. And when I think about it, that's so much about growing up in Salt Lake City, Utah, being not of the largest or most dominant faith in Utah, and also not being of, Utah's known for sort of blonde, blue-eyed people, and here we were, this family of Japanese American kids growing up in Salt Lake, and then we moved to Kaysville, which is about 30 minutes outside of Salt Lake, and it was hard to be different. And we were definitely different when we were in Kaysville. It was funny when we were building our home in Kaysville. The neighbors would come over because we were like this anomaly, this like unicorn family coming in. And I remember this young man saying to my brother, he was good friends with my brother, "What do you guys eat?" And we were building this house, and my brother opens up this cabinet. It's like full of junk food, right? That we were all like eating on the during the day. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, do you guys eat hamburgers?" And Darren and Kelly were like, "Yeah, right? Like, yeah, of course." But being in a space like that where you're just seen as different all the time, it was hard. And because we didn't fit in, I think for me particularly, I think that's why my passion sits in that space, is like I really feel like I was on the outside. I know how hard that is. I want to make things easier, better for people that are like me.
Did anybody outside of your family reach out to you, help you, like try to bring you on the inside a little bit more, or were you kind of like trying to figure it out on your own? Like what was that like?
Oh gosh. I can't even tell you this woman's name, but she was the librarian in my junior high. And when you're walking around in the library of your middle school, trying to figure out what to read, this librarian came up to me and she said, "Have you ever read The Outsiders?" S.E. Hinton. And I said, "No." She goes, "I think you'll like it, Kristi." And I took it home and I read it, and I remember weeping at the end of the book. And if you know the story of The Outsiders, it's all about sort of these two communities, the poor kids and the rich kids. And it's about Pony Boy, who is this kind of interesting character, and his best friend, and they're poor, and they get into this altercation where his best friend, Pony Boy's best friend, ends up killing the rich kid in order to protect Pony Boy. But the whole story is beautiful about the idea of being an outsider and what that feels like. And in the end, they run away because this young man has killed this kid, and they end up living elsewhere while everything's happening. And at this point in the story, if I recall it correctly, I think a church catches on fire, and the kid that had killed the other rich kid runs in to save children, and he gets burned. Like, horrible burns, and he ends up dying in the end of the book. But the story is really about one is just how often we see our groups pitted against each other, but they'll also, as young people trying to figure out the world, like how often like society makes us enemies instead of seeing us as being something more. And I think at the end, as his best friend is dying, he's like, "Stay golden." And I think that story and that book really changed so much for me. One, I found reading in a way that I'd always been reading, but to have this book like literally make me weep in my bed at home as I read it, and then go and read everything of Essie Hinton as a woman, and I read everything of her story, everything that she had written. But it also just gave me this sense of like, I am not alone. Right. This woman has written about outsiders, right? People like me who don't feel a sense of belonging, who crave that, and yet, this tragedy happens. But it also reminds us that we're seen.
Right.
And so that was a big part of it. But then I've also had all these other people that have seen me, but most of it happened in college. Like in those moments when, again, you get to college, and I went to the University of Utah, which at the time didn't have any real diversity. I mean, it was just, there was like 7% diverse kids there. And I really struggled at that place. I didn't know where I belonged there. And yet I had this community, this deep, rich community of Japanese American kids who also were at the University of Utah. But overall, we were just in this sea of, of white folks there and being othered all the time. But then I would have these professors that really took an interest in me. And David Sambamatsu changed like my trajectory in my studies. He taught Asian American experience and social psychology courses, and he just really opened up all of this knowledge for me that began to help me understand my own history and my community's history in the United States. And then taking classes from Dr. Ron Coleman, who's a historian, and he also academically changed where I was looking and what I was studying and understood. But he was also somebody that helped me in my first professional job, and became a mentor to me. All of these people, though, were also outsiders, right? They were folks that were faculty of color often, who didn't have to pay attention to me at all if they didn't want to, but they did. Right? And they sort of helped me figure out how to move through a university, how to gain the best education that I could. They pushed me to be better too. Like, they were not kind all the time about about my studies or the way I was doing things.
But you had brothers though, so you knew how to deal with these guys.
I knew how to deal with them. But they were like the kind of folks that would say, "Do it better.
Yeah.
That's not good enough. You're better than that." So it wasn't soft, right? It was sort of that hard but loving
Yes.
way of being in the world. And I think I model so much of how I work with students in the same way. Like, I have the highest expectations of the people I work with, the students that I care for. Because on so many levels, I think that was the other part, is I don't always think everyone expected much from me, and they should have. Because, and that's my whole thing, why I'm so passionate, is I see talent everywhere.
Yes.
Right? Like, these young people that are coming to college without clarity on what they want to do or where they want to go, or maybe just a belief that they cannot be successful. Like, those are the people I love the most, because I think all they need is for someone to say, "I know you can do it. And not only can you do it, I know you can be a rock star in this place, but you're going to have to work really hard, and you're going to have to do things that stretch you and make you grow. And I'm not going to be the person that's going to let you get away with just, getting by. I want more for you and from you." And that's something that's really important to me. Because I had some of it, right? I had people that were doing that for me outside of my family. And my parents were incredible and believed in me. But so much, you can have the best family in the world, but if society is constantly telling you that you're not supposed to be at the table,
right?
Like, they can only do so much to influence how you feel.
Well, and I think even today it's even harder, Kristi, than when you were in college, and certainly since I was way before you, that you didn't have social media to be able to see what was going elsewhere in the world. You knew your community and you knew the people that are there, and I think the pressure today, I'm so intrigued by how much it shatters the confidence of a lot of young people because they are never pretty enough or smart enough or rich enough or talented enough. And it's like, you're not comparing. I mean, I think about growing up in Peoria, Illinois. I had no one to compare myself to other than, my neighbor or something. I wasn't looking at somebody famous or somebody rich or all I knew was everybody was on our block or in exactly the same economic state, that we were. And so I think trying to figure out how you kind of put that aside, even if you do have great family and support, when there's so much other stuff going in the world. I mean, first of all, I want to really recognize something that you said that I think is so powerful, and I really want to capture this in this podcast. You are better than that. Like, that is like such a powerful statement. I mean, I'm really because I think so much about how we try to mentor people and give them confidence, but this concept of kind of putting it on your shoulders and saying, you are better than that. Whew, that's like a wow.
Yeah. Well, and when it happened, it was painful, right?
right.
Like, I was like, and again, this faculty member, Professor Sambamatsu, he was seeing my talent in the classroom. And here I was having, he was calling on me. He wasn't letting me off the hook. And I was always like, I'm sitting back here, I'm going to be quiet and all of that. But he wouldn't let me off the hook. And so he'd ask me questions and I would respond. And then he started thinking that I was a smart kid. Like, he was like, oh, she's smart. I want to put her in for this scholarship. And then he saw my grades. And I was an average student at that time. Really average student at the time. And that's when he was just like, what is this? And I was horrified. And he's like, I can't submit you for this.
Right.
And that's when that came out. You're better than this.
Wow.
What are you doing? Right? And no one had ever said that to me in that way. I don't know that they knew. But then it became, I went from being an average student to being on the dean's list, almost immediately.
Yeah.
And it was just because someone was saying that to me outside of my family, right? I mean, my family always knew I was better than that, but when your family says it, you kind of, whatever. But to have someone else say that recognized that you were smart, talented, capable, better than what you've been doing, it gave me this sense of, okay, yeah, I am. And so I think that's what I try to help other people see in themselves. So it is sort of like a butt kicking with a hug.
Right.
Right?
right.
It's simultaneously that it happens. But that's, I think, that piece of helping people figure out, how they want to be their very best. I was on a panel once talking about mentoring, and someone asked the question, what do you think the most important thing is? And I said, having a mentor who sees you and who appreciates the goals you want to achieve. Not the ones that they want for themselves, for you, but what you really want to achieve. And so while I can say things to people like, you can do more, you can do better, it's also got to be framed in that space of in what you want to do. Right. It's the hardest lesson, I think, too, as a parent, is to be able to allow your kids, for me especially, to do their own thing. Not the thing that I think they should do, but what drives them, what they're passionate about. But I still need them to do it with abandon, right? With glee and with all their effort, and to do it to the best that they can. But as a parent, I think that's even been, it's funny, when you work with students, you can do all these things. When you are working with your own children, it feels so different, right? But it's been the hardest lesson and the most important lesson I've learned when working with my own kids, who I know feel very much like I did, as outsiders in a world that, wants a certain thing to happen. My kids don't really sit in that box.
Yeah.
They're outside of it too. But working with students and then coming home and trying to figure out how to parent in those spaces has been another piece of learning how to love people, support them, to ensure that their voices are always heard, to make space for people that are different. And my kids are definitely in that space. And they've made me a better person, but they've also made me better at the work I do every day, because I'm having to grow in that space too as a parent. And then I bring that to the work I'm doing now. It's helped me to be more understanding. They've also helped me to stay clear too on what's changing in the world.
Yes.
Right. And so you brought up social media and all of those things that influence our us too, as well as them. There's so much damaging stuff out there that we have to be conscious of. And yet there's so many beautiful things too that I'm so excited about that are out there for people to learn from. Even just sitting down with you today and being able to do this experience, and wherever this goes into your work, I hope people watch this and go, oh, we're putting good into the world too, not just selling a new beauty treatment when we're all aging.
Right.
This is that piece too, that social media has the power to do wonderful things, but so many of the things I think my kids even experience today it's been detrimental.
Well, let me just close our session. There's so many things we can talk about, and it's so fascinating. But what advice do you have, or do you give for someone that you see or feel is an outsider? How do you? Is there a shortcut? Is there something that makes the walls fall down so that you're not sitting on a bench by yourself? Like how, and because you're around students all the time, or even maybe with your kids, like are there just a couple of key things that you would just say that maybe that you wish you knew when you were in that situation as a girl, or just kind of any advice that you would have?
I think that if I were to, this is hard. The first thing I would say is, don't be afraid to be on the outside. It's actually amazing. And, there's power in that too, to be on the outside. I really love Bell Hook's work around this, and the way in which she sort of says power can be situated on the outside. To be able to see, to be able to view what's going on in the middle gives you a vantage point that's so incredible, right? When you're right in the middle of it, you can't always see.
Right.
Like you're almost blinded by things because it's too close. Being on the outside, you can take it all in. And so for young people that maybe feel that way, embrace it, because there's power there too. But the challenge that I have, and what I felt at the time, and what I want for young people and for students, is that what I want for people to do is be able to enter into those spaces, to go in and out of those spaces. That's where we all should hope for, right? Is that we don't always have to be in the middle, but that we can enter that space. But I felt like when I was a young person, I just wasn't allowed to enter those spaces, right. That I was not permitted there. I do think that's changed for me. Like I feel like I can come into the center when I want to, and then I can go back into those spaces that feel like home, which is on the outside. But that's the space that I think that I want folks to understand, is there's something beautiful about being on the outside. I was listening to NPR this week, and Ozzy Osbourne died.
Yes, yeah.
And I wasn't a fan of I didn't really know Ozzy Osbourne's music. I knew who he was mostly because it was the TV show, The Osbournes.
Right.
But they were talking about him on NPR on Morning Edition this week, and they were talking about him and where he comes from. And I didn't know any of his story, but small community, working class community in England, and that he just wanted to do something different, right? And he wrote this music, and they were playing some of his old songs. I'd never even listened to Black Sabbath or anything, but I was listening to him, and his music was like this. I never appreciated the beauty of his voice, but he actually had an incredible voice. But his voice was full of angst, anger, and sadness of being on the outside, right? But he made a fortune out of being in that space of creating for people that often are marginalized, right? Not part of the mainstream. And he did this. And so, again, not knowing anything about his work, I'm sitting there listening to NPR and thinking, oh my God, that's an amazing story of the power of staying in that space, of creating for people like you that maybe don't feel like they fit in, creating an entire genre of music that still, folks, I'm a child of the 90s now, I guess, where, I'm thinking about Red Hot Chili Peppers and, Smashing Pumpkins. They're all sort of derivative of that time too, that hard racing music, singing about hard things. And that's power too. And I want for young people to know that there isn't a quick solution, but to embrace where they're at, to love being different, and that all of us are needed, especially in universities and especially in higher ed, to come into those spaces, to have great discussions, to add to scholarship. And really, ultimately, when you think about higher ed's role in solving some of the most important problems of the world, it will take all of us. And so that outsider space is so necessary to the future we want, the one where we all are safe, happy, fed, nurtured, cared for.
Wow. I don't think I could add anything to that. I think it's a perfect way to end the podcast. So, Kristi, thank you so much for your time and all the great work that you do to make such a big difference. And you do make a big difference every day with all the students and people like me that have a chance to get to work with you. So, thank you so much.
Jane, thank you.
In her role at the Leeds School of Business at the University of Colorado, I've had the pleasure to work with Kristi on many initiatives, mainly in the MBA program. She is tireless in her pursuit of engaging students and providing meaningful mentorship and resources for success. As a child of Japanese American parents who were relocated to Utah after Pearl Harbor in World War II, so many experiences formed the amazing leader she is today. When she talks about the importance of not being alone, of being seen, and not being afraid of being on the outside, so many questions for us to consider came to me. But I want to start with the turning point for her when a teacher said, "You are better than this." This challenge for her to own her own stuff is so compelling. It is not about comparing herself to others, but asking if she is doing all she can do. So my questions for us today. First, think of a difficult situation that we may be in and ask, are we better than this? And second, how do we bring others into our circles and help them find the best part of them, not by giving them the answer as we see it, but giving them the space to be heard and find them by themselves. Special thanks to Jane's Place fabulous producer, Aditi Joshi, who made my passion a reality. I am also so appreciative that the amazing musician, Tim Cook, provided the lively music from the Subdudes called Them Figs. This podcast was brought to you by Rudy's Bakery new gluten-free Sandos with Justin's Nut Butter and from our friends at Naturally Colorado. I want to keep asking questions that matter, and I want this to feel like a space where your story belongs too. If there's something you want to talk about, a moment, a memory, a shift you're going through, Jane's Place door is always open. Truly. You can drop me a note on the website, join a future episode, or simply listen in when you're ready. Because Jane's Place isn't just a podcast, it's a gathering, and I'm so grateful that you're here.